Malik means king, and Malik's kingdom was overtime tonight. The sixth man of the year favorite went off, as did the entire Kings big three. They defeat the Memphis Grizzlies and secure a 4-2 homestand, and you are listening to Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. I'm still buzzing after that overtime victory for the Sacramento Kings. Before we get into the greatness of Malik Monk tonight, the excellence of the Kings big three as a whole, Keon Ellis taking Desmond Bane to Ellis Island, and more, we do have to get a couple of things out of the way. The first thing is prayers up to Kevin Huerter, who got the start tonight again, and like a minute and a half into the game, went down with a pretty scary injury. Now, it was eventually reported for the Kings as a shoulder injury, which I'm not going to speculate on anything. I think that might actually be good news, because watching it initially, watching it in real time and then watching the replay, I thought, as did a lot of Kings fans, that he might have fractured his wrist or his forearm. Like, he got swiped down, he got his arm hit hard, fell to the ground, and you could see like his arm, not necessarily pop necessarily, but you could tell by his reaction on the ground and in the slow motion replay that something went wrong with his arm. So I was expecting the worst, right? I was expecting like a fractured wrist or a forearm fracture or both or something like that. And we got the shoulder report. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not a serious shoulder injury. We have no idea. We'll get more information about that probably tomorrow or in the days to come while the Sacramento Kings head out on their 3-game road trip. I expect Kevin Huerter is going to miss at least a decent amount of time. Hopefully it's not too significant, because regardless of how well he's playing or how much he's struggling and how well Keon Ellis has been playing and other guys off of the bench, Kevin Huerter is important to this Kings team, and the Kings can absolutely use a lot of what Kevin brings to the table come postseason time. So when we have an update on Kevin Huerter's status, I will provide that for you. You can follow me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. I usually post the updates there, and of course I'll mention it as soon as I know on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. That's the first thing to get out of the way. So get well soon, Kevin. I hope he's okay. The second thing is, as many great things as there were tonight, and trust me, we're going to spend the whole podcast talking about all the great stuff tonight, there were a handful of Kings moments, right? The Kings still struggled to put away a weaker opponent in their own building. Now, again, we're not going to spend too much time on this, because like Whitey Gleason says from Sacktown Sports 1140, and he's absolutely right. Like, at this time of year, there are no such things as good losses, and there's no such things as bad wins, right? Just get a win by any means necessary. And the Kings ultimately held on to win this game and defeat a Grizzlies team that put up quite a fight. Now, the Kings took a 12-point lead at one point in this game, and that lead disappeared quickly. They had a couple of stretches where the Kings just fell apart. They did a bad job taking care of the basketball. They turned the ball over 20 times, leading to 27 Grizzlies points. Also, the Grizzlies killed them on the offensive glass, 15 offensive rebounds for Memphis, leading to 23 second chance points. So there were definitely some Kings moments. Mike Brown pointed these out too. This is not just pessimist Matt starting a podcast that's supposed to be good with something negative. Like, this is what Mike Brown pointed out post-game. I'm bringing it up now to get it out of the way, to recognize that there were some shortcomings, there were some bad Kings moments in this game that the Kings should feel a little bit concerned about or be disappointed with. But in the end, it's easier to deal with those frustrations in a win and enter that film session and break that all down after a victory than it is had the Kings. Imagine if the Kings lost this game or lost to the Grizzlies in overtime, right? Imagine what the state of this podcast would be, let alone Kings Twitter, let alone that Kings locker room, right? It's good that the Kings found a way to win this game. That's all that matters, right? And of course, it impacted the Kings positively in the standings, which I'll get into at the end of the show. But Malik Monk was just sensational tonight. Absolutely sensational. Now, the Malik means king. If you don't know, Malik in Arabic means king. So that's why the joke is, or the saying is, Malik means king, and you'll see it a lot on King's social media every time Malik has a big game. But Malik tonight, 28 points, shot 10 of 19 from the field, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. He scored 12 of Sacramento's 16 points in overtime and shot a perfect 4 of 4 during the overtime period. This is his 24th 20 or more point game off of the bench. To give you an idea of how dominant that is, the next closest players are Jordan Clarkson and Bogdan Bogdanovic with 14. Monk has both of those guys by 10 games where he scored 20 or more points off of the bench. He is the absolute runaway sixth man of the year. It should be unanimous. It shouldn't even be a question. There's nothing that Malik can really do, or any of these guys can do for the remainder of this season, that will erase the fact that Malik Monk is the best sixth man in the league. There is nobody better. There's nobody more important and impactful to their team. Malik is that guy. So secure him the sixth man of the year award, and while you're at it, secure him the bag, because Malik is going to get paid this offseason, and I pray to God it's by the Sacramento Kings. Because I don't think, and I've talked about this before, I don't think there is a guy in this league that the Kings realistically can go out and get that replaces what Malik Monk means to this team. Malik is the part of the Kings' big three at this point. Maybe it can turn into a big four with Keegan Murray, and I think a lot of people, when they hear big three, they would think Keegan Murray is a part of that. I know I've presented Keegan as part of the Kings' big three, but this year, as good as Keegan has been on the defensive end of the floor, as much as he's developed, this year Malik is that third guy, right? You have your two absolute bona fide superstars in Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, who both did their thing tonight. And then you have Malik, who's capable of exploding for 20-plus points off the bench. He's done it 24 times this season now. And on top of that, he's a playmaker. He's a facilitator, one of the best on the team in assists, right? Malik is just a special, special guy. And on top of that, he plays with such an energy, such a flash, such a flair. You never know what Malik Monk is going to do. And he had 3 massive dunks tonight. Really 4 if you count a dunk that he had in overtime off of a foul. It might have been his biggest dunk of the night, to be honest with you. It didn't count. It was just kind of a showcase dunk there towards the end of the game. It's funny because there were a couple of unbelievable dunks tonight. Like, Malik has had some candidates for dunk of the year in the NBA. Nobody is topping what Anthony Edwards did to John Collins in the Utah Jazz tonight. If you haven't seen that Anthony Edwards dunk, it is one of the craziest dunks that I have ever seen in my life. It is unbelievable what Anthony Edwards did. And then after that, Johnson, it was Jalen Johnson, or I can't remember who it was, in Atlanta, dunked on Austin Reeves in Los Angeles. And I tweeted out, like, good things come in threes. That means we're going to get a big Malik Monk dunk tonight. Little did I know we were going to get 3 of them, right? Malik put on an absolute show above the rim, shooting the ball, facilitating, scoring in the fourth quarter, and scoring in overtime. Malik means king, and he helped big time. He carried the Kings in a lot of ways to this 121-111 victory. But the Kings' big three as a whole was incredible. Let's talk about Domantas Sabonis tonight. 25 points, 18 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 blocks. That is 50 straight double-doubles for Domantas Sabonis. He is just the third player since the NBA-ABA merger to hit 50 straight double-doubles, and he's closing in on the leaders. The second highest is Moses Malone with 51. The highest, as we know, is Kevin Love with 53. Domantas Sabonis is coming for that record. He is going to get that record. He was sensational tonight, did have some costly turnovers, did have some big mistakes at times in this game. He wasn't perfect. It wasn't his best game by any means. He did actually end up winning the Defensive Player of the Game crown. Had some big moments guarding Jaren Jackson Jr. I think took a big charge at one point, which is, I thought it was for sure going to be Keon Ellis's crown again, and we'll talk about Keon later on in the podcast. But Domantas Sabonis won the Defensive Player of the Game crown. He was fantastic tonight. And then, of course, there's De'Aaron Fox, who did his thing. Fox, 23 points, 4 of 7 from three-point range. He caught fire I don't remember if it was the second or the third quarter. No, it was the third quarter. De'Aaron caught fire and hit like 3 straight threes from the perimeter. Also had 10 assists. So with Monk doing the thing that Monk was doing, Fox really took over the distribution duties tonight. 10 assists from De'Aaron Fox is absolutely sensational. His playmaking continues to get better and better and better. I was having a conversation with Kevin Phippen from the Kings Herald on Kings Twitter tonight. And Kevin was absolutely right. He commented on De'Aaron's basketball IQ. And you see De'Aaron's basketball IQ in his playmaking and in his defense, in his decision-making, right? De'Aaron came into the league with an absolute God-given talent of speed that's untouchable. De'Aaron's speed is unbelievable. That's a God-given talent. But to watch him develop throughout his career, to continue to use that speed and pick and choose how to use that speed correctly, but also develop into the brilliant basketball mind that De'Aaron is now, that's been a really fun part of his development. But put this into your mind, right? Check this out. This is combined what the big three tonight did for the Kings. 76 points, 31 rebounds, 21 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks tonight. 3 players, your 3 best players combined for those unbelievably ridiculous numbers. All 3 of them had their hands all over this game, affected all the stat columns. It was just an incredible performance out of the big 3 for the Sacramento Kings tonight, and they needed every bit of it to defeat the Memphis Grizzlies, which on one hand you might be rolling your eyes at, but in the end, your big guys stepped up, your main guy stepped up to help you secure a win and overcome an issue that you've been struggling with all season long, which is winning these important winnable games on your home floor. Now, a huge assist also goes to Keon Ellis and his defense on Desmond Bane. We'll talk about that. Plus, the Kings' incredible defensive improvement over these last 4 games. I'll dive into the numbers. That's all coming up in just a second. Before that, though, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by my great friends at Sac Yard Community Tap House. If you're looking for a place to watch any or every of the Kings games during this 3-game road trip, you're looking for a place to watch when the Kings go on the road during the playoffs, or any Kings game at any point. Maybe you don't have tickets to the game in the Golden One Center, but you still want to enjoy your community of Kings fans. Sac Yard Community Tap House is the perfect place for you to watch Kings games. Community is in their name for a reason, right? They're a community hub. There's always people in there, so many different events, different clubs that meet there, live music, just so many fun trivia nights and things like that they do. And for the first time ever, we'll have a live Locked On Kings podcast. Never done this before. I'm honestly really nervous about it. Jerry Reynolds and Gary Gerald, 2 Kings broadcast legends. They will join me for a live podcast at Sac Yard on April 1st. No, it is not an April Fool's joke. 6 p.m., Sac Yard Community Tap House, April 1st. No tickets required. You don't have to pay a thing. Show up, get some drinks, enjoy hopefully a great conversation with those 2 Kings legends and some community with your fellow Sacramento Kings fans. Sac Yard is your home for the Locked On Kings listener. Mention you listen to Locked On Kings when you go for 10% off your tab. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are the right fit for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all the work while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources to go through the hiring process. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make that process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Desmond Bane, welcome to Ellis Island. Now, I wish I could say that I coined that phrase. I absolutely didn't. I stole that from my great friends, Stiles and Watkins, Alan Stiles and Chris Watkins from Sacktown Sports 1140, their midday show. Make sure you check them out. Ellis Island is the new term for what? Keon Ellis, is doing and has been doing to opponents defensively, right? He shut down Dame Lillard earlier on in this this road trip. Oh, sorry, this homestand. Held Dame Lillard to 10 points. The very next night, shut down D'Angelo Russell. I believe held him to 6 points. Tonight, now Desmond Bane got his. He led the Memphis Grizzlies in scoring. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. He ended up with he didn't lead them in scoring. He had 24. Jaren Jackson Jr. had 25. Desmond Bane had a good game. So credit to Desmond. But here's what's important. Here's where the Ellis Island comes into effect. In the fourth quarter, Desmond Bane scored just 4 points on 2 of 5 shooting. In overtime, Desmond Bane scored 0 points on 0 of 2 shooting. So in fourth quarter and overtime combined, Desmond Bane shot less than 30%. 4 points, 2 of 7 from the field when the game was on the line. That is because of Keon Ellis. And it got so bad that Desmond Bane was trying to get Keegan Murray, who's been an elite defender all season long for the Kings. Keegan Murray is the guy that teams have been trying to get switched off of their main guy so many times this season. Keon Ellis was so obnoxious and so disruptive that Desmond Bane was like, get me Keegan Murray. Switch Keegan Murray onto me. I'd rather face Keegan than face Keon Ellis. Who is this kid? And Keon locked him down. Keon was in his head, right? And shout out Keegan Murray as well. When Keegan was switched onto him, Keegan did an excellent job too. But Keon Ellis was sensational tonight. 5 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 5 blocks. We're talking about a 6'3", 6'4" guard. I think he's listed as 6'5", but come on, I don't think he's 6'5". He was everywhere tonight. And this is important too, because think of the last play that Keon Ellis made in the Knicks loss. His job was try and stop Jalen Brunson, who went for 42 points in that game. The play that everybody remembers in the fourth quarter is Keon Ellis keeping his head on the swivel while guarding Brunson, looking for the screen, and Brunson waits for Keon to look and blows right past him, and before Keon even knew it, Brunson was at the rim, right? In a way, it was like not necessarily a welcome to the NBA moment, because this is Keon's second year in the league, but it was like, gotcha, kid. Like, you can't stay in front of me type moment. Keon responds with the incredible defensive performance that he put up tonight. We're talking elite defense. And it's not the circumstance that we wanted. We didn't want Keon Ellis to become a starter because Kevin Huerter got hurt, but according to Mike Brown, the expectation is that Keon will be the starter for the Sacramento Kings as long as Kevin Huerter is out with this shoulder injury. So in some ways, we got what we wanted. But again, the circumstances don't necessarily feel good about that. But in addition to Keon Ellis' great defense, the Sacramento Kings defense in general is significantly better over this 4-game stretch, right? After they lost to the Houston Rockets, which that was the first game during this homestand where I felt the Kings had really picked up and locked in physicality-wise. They've done an excellent job with the physicality over the majority of this homestand, right? But the last 4 games, the Kings have held their opponents in regulation. So this doesn't include the overtime period tonight. We're just talking about the 48 minutes of regulation. The Kings have held their opponents to 94 points, 107 points, 98 points, and then tonight 105 points. That is an average of 101 points per game allowed in the last 4 games, or 4 straight games. To put that into perspective, the T-Wolves lead the league. I believe it's the Timberwolves. I didn't jot it down. The T-Wolves lead the league. The number 1 defensive team in the league averages 106 points per game allowed. That's 5 points better than the best defense. Now, that's over the course of the season. We're just talking about a 4-game stretch. But it puts into context how good the Kings' defense has been over these 4 games. And it's pretty astounding that one of those 4 games the Kings lost, and in that game they held their opponent to under 100 points. That was the New York Knicks game. You would think if the Kings were holding their opponents to 101 points per game, that they would be 4-0 over that stretch. Unfortunately, they're not. The offense still needs a little bit of work. We talked about that a lot after the Knicks game. It's kind of a lot what we saw in the playoffs, which is the Kings played a really good, high-energy, physical, defensive game, but offensively they didn't look like themselves. Well, tonight, the offense still wasn't great. Paint touches and spray threes have been a big focus for Mike Brown. I asked him after the game what the spray three numbers were tonight. The Kings as a whole shot only 31% from three-point range. They missed a lot of wide open looks. Mike said he couldn't remember off the top of his head. They either went 5 of 18 or 5 of 19 on spray threes. The goal is to generate 20 spray three attempts per game. So the Kings were just under their goal, but that number is pretty solid. The number of makes is not solid, but that's something that Mike Brown can live with. When you're generating good looks and they're just not falling, it's just one of those poor shooting nights. But the defense is what's been able to keep the Kings in these games, because offensively they haven't looked fantastic really over this 4-game stretch. They've had good moments, but they haven't looked like their high-scoring selves. So to see them go 3-1 over a stretch where it's been really on the backs of their defense, that's pretty awesome to see. Now, I asked both De'Aaron Fox and Mike Brown about these defensive numbers in this defensive stretch after the game, and here's what they said. Fox, in regulation over these last 4 games, you're holding opponents to 101 points per game. Just defensively, the growth of this team, what does that say about the work that you've put in on that end?
I think we've definitely been better defensively over this stretch. We want to be able to try to put complete games in, shoot better, all around. I mean, see if we can have one of those 50-40 games on the offensive end, and then also do what we're doing defensively. So I think that's the next step for us.
Mike, in regulation over these last 4 games, Kings are allowing 101 points per game. We've seen this team capable of doing this at times before, but for a 4-game stretch, first time I think since the playoffs, can you share what that means for the progress of the defensive development?
It's huge, because, like I said, you guys see it with your own eyes. We have some wide open shots that just aren't going in, and I can't make the ball go in. You can't make the ball go in. Even the people shooting it can't make it always go in, and so you have to be able to give yourself a chance by taking care of the ball, keeping them off the offensive glass, doing some of the little things. But you have to defend, and if you are capable of defending, you understand it, you embrace it, then you're going to at least give yourself a chance, because now you don't have to rely on scoring 120, 130 points every time you want to get a win, and knowing that we're still capable of that. So, we say we want to play fast. We ended up with 19 fast break points tonight. We want to be physical. I thought we were physical, except when it came to keeping them off the glass. I thought defensively, Doma stuck his chest out. I thought Keon was really good. I thought we had some pretty good defensive possessions. And then we want to play together. And I think we had 30 assists tonight, So it has to be a part of our identity. I think our guys are understanding it, and it's great because it's at the right time that it needs to happen.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by Stitch Fix. You know that instant confidence boost that you have when you're wearing that outfit that just makes you look good? That's what I get when I use Stitch Fix. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, your size, and your budget. They do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to update your wardrobe this season. You can easily update your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just gave my stylist my size, which is a big deal for me. A lot of people are surprised when they meet me to find out how tall and thin I am. I'm 6'3", just a shade under 6'4", and I'm like 160 pounds, right? I am a twig, and that means finding clothing that fits me is a difficult thing to do. All my stuff has to be pretty much custom. Well, Stitch Fix does that for me, and they help find the styles and the trends that everybody is wearing or whatever looks good at that point in time and makes it fit to my body, makes it fit to me, which is something I've never really experienced at any point in my life consistently. My stylist always sends the great pieces. I try them out. If I don't like them, I can send them back at any time, keep the ones that I do like, and the shipping and returns and exchanges are always free. It's style that makes you feel as good as you look. Get started today at stitchfix.com/lockedon. That's stitchfix.com/lockedon. Stitchfix.com/lockedon. Lost in the fantastic game for the Kings' Big Three, led by Malik Monk and the excellent defense of Keon Ellis. I want to make sure I give Keegan Murray some props and some love as well. His game is going to kind of be brushed under the radar a little bit because of the amazing performances, but Keegan Murray tonight was really, really good. right? Like if this is a stat line that you could get consistently from Keegan Murray, you're in phenomenal shape. He had 15 points tonight, shot 6 of 17 from the field. Now the shooting percentage is not great, but I am A-okay with Keegan taking 17 shots. Got no issue with it. I would rather him take 17 shots, kind of similar to Sabonis. I would rather the shot attempts be higher because I know he's not just forcing things. I'd rather him shoot more shots and miss more than make shots but not shoot enough, which has been a problem with Keegan Murray at times over his 2-season career here in Sacramento. But in addition to his 15 points, 10 rebounds tonight. Also had 3 assists and 2 steals. Anytime you can get double-digit rebounds from Keegan Murray, that is a great thing. So an awesome game from Keegan Murray tonight. He deserves love and attention for that. Also, I want to give a shout-out to Chris Duarte. I thought Chris Duarte, like the first quarter when Kevin Huerter went down and we all were assuming the worst here in the arena, the energy was kind of weird, right? It just felt off, and the Memphis Grizzlies were doing their best to take advantage of that. And Chris Duarte came in for a stretch in the first quarter, and I think he hit like back-to-back three-pointers to kind of give this building a little bit of life, give the Kings a little bit of life, get the Kings some points on the board, and kickstart things a little bit. In the end, Duarte, 8 points, 3 of 6 shooting from the field, 2 of 4 from three-point range. Not a flashy, phenomenal game, one of those games that you see and just go, okay. But the context of when he scored and how important he was, I think, to kind of kickstarting the Kings and getting them back into the rhythm of the game, I thought was really, really good. Now, where are the Kings at standings-wise? Well, with this win tonight, the Dallas Mavericks didn't play. The Phoenix Suns didn't play. The Kings came into tonight's game technically in the 6th seed by like .006 or 002 in the win percentage column, right? Barely in the 6th seed. With tonight, they are now firmly in the 6th seed, but they created half a game of separation. So the Kings, Suns, and Mavericks were technically all 8.5 games back of the top of the conference. With the win tonight, the Kings are now 8 games back at the top of the conference. The Suns and the Suns and the Mavs are the Mavs are in 7th. The Suns are in 8th. And they're both 8.5 games back still. But the Kings create a little bit of separation. Not a whole lot, like the Phoenix Sun or the Dallas Mavericks could still move up and tie the Sacramento Kings tomorrow. Of course, we're rooting for the San Antonio Spurs tomorrow, taking on the Mavericks. Don't have a great feeling about that game, but hey, maybe the Spurs will shock Dallas a little bit. Maybe it's time for the Mavs to lose a winnable game or two, like the Kings have had or have done at times this season. So go San Antonio Spurs. Also, the New Orleans Pelicans, they play the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow. Now, I think most people think the Pelicans are firmly in that 5th spot, but they're only 2 games ahead of the Kings. And the Kings still play the Pelicans once later on this season. Now, to most Kings fans, that might be a bad thing based off of how the Pelicans have destroyed the Kings in the 4 times they've already played this season. They got a 5th game because of the in-season tournament. But you put yourself in a position where you handle your business, you win some of these games, and maybe, just maybe, you have a chance to steal that spot away from the Pelicans at the last minute with that big game coming up later on in the season. So the Kings aren't out of the running for the 5th spot. Their focus should definitely be more on keeping the Suns and Mavericks in 7th and 8th out of their way or behind them. But the Pelicans are still a little bit in the crosshairs. You know, it was interesting before the game started. I asked Mike Brown how much the Kings were paying attention to the standings with a 3-way tie coming into tonight. And Mike was honest. He said, yeah, we have a standings board in our training room / locker room area, and we update it every day. So they're very much paying attention to what's going on. They're aware of how much these games mean. Typically, you'll get a cliche answer from coaches or players of, we're just focused on one game at a time, and we're focused on ourselves and not focused on our opponents, blah, blah, blah. Control what you can control, which is the right mindset to have, but it was refreshing for Mike to go, yeah, we have a standings board in our locker room. Like, we are updating it. We are aware of exactly where we're at and who's biting at our heels. So that was refreshing to hear. But in order for the Kings to help secure that 6th seed and go right into the playoffs outright, they need to handle their business in this upcoming road trip. They got the win tonight in a game they kind of had to win. And now they head on the road. 3 games, Eastern Conference trip. They have the Toronto Raptors, the Washington Wizards, the Orlando Magic. The Magic are the only playoff team out of that three, right? The Magic are a good team. The Kings barely beat them in overtime here in this building earlier on this season. So the Magic are not a pushover by any means. Maybe you felt that way about them a year or two ago, but that's not the case right now. That's going to be a tough game. So I can't look at this and just go outright, yeah, the Kings absolutely should go 3-0. Anything less is unacceptable. That's obviously the goal. 2-1 to me is the absolute expectation. Handle your business in Toronto. Handle your business certainly in Washington. You lose that Wizards game, that's not going to be a happy Locked On Kings podcast. I can tell you that much. So find a way to handle your business there. Also, kind of poking the bear a little bit. Should mention tonight, too, the New York Knicks did the Kings a solid a little bit, too, and defeated the Golden State Warriors, who are all the way down in that 10th spot. So how's the weather like down there, Warriors? Good luck dealing with that. But regardless of what happens during this road trip and any of these games, of course, I will have Locked On Kings podcast for you after each and every single one. And after this road trip is done, the Kings come back for a 5-game homestand, starting with the 76ers, who, of course, are a really, really, really good basketball team. Then you have back-to-back games against the Dallas Mavericks. Not on back-to-back nights. I think one's on a Tuesday and one's on a Friday. But 2 straight games against the Mavericks. That can decide where these two teams end up. Like, those games are unbelievably massive, right? So 2 huge games between the Kings and the Mavericks coming up, and then they have the Utah Jazz and LA Clippers to wrap up that homestand. So do yourself a favor. Handle your business on this road trip. Get at least 2 of these 3 games and put yourself in a position to where you're not trying to catch the Mavericks in these games, and hopefully you can create a little separation by winning these games from Dallas, or at the very least, give yourself a little bit of a cushion so that if you lose one of these games, it's not the end of the world. Or lose one of those games against the Mavericks, it's not the end of the world. We'll see if the Kings can do that. Appreciate your support, as always, here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Those of you that I got to meet at tonight's game, I really, really appreciate you. You guys are unbelievable. The support of this podcast just continues to blow me away, so thank you so much. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.